everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of the Spurs Chat podcast. This is a bumper edition because in today's episode we will be covering both pre-season friendlies that Spurs played today. 2 draws, 1 at Hotspur away, Tottenham Hotspur 2, Wycombe Wanderers 2, and I'm sitting right by the stadium at Luton, so sorry for any background noise, but we've just drawn 0-0 at Kenilworth Road. We've got a lot to talk about in this edition. Now, of course, my name is Chris Cowlin and I'll be hosting today. We're live on YouTube, we're live on Facebook and also X, so please do get involved. Let us know how you are feeling right now as a Tottenham Hotspur fan and what the Spurs need to do in this summer transfer window. At the moment, I feel like Spurs are crying out for a number 10. Of course, James Maddison wasn't involved today. Will he be that creative spark that we desperately need in this team and in the final third? But many minutes for many players across the board today, not only against Wickham and Luton, but the Spurs under-21s were also in action, losing 2-0 at Woking. But it is not about the results at this stage. It is about It is about minutes in the legs for a lot of these players, because of course on Sunday, the squad, Thomas Frank, will be travelling to Hong Kong to face Arsenal. And then we go to South Korea to face Newcastle, and then away at Bayern Munich. And then it is the Super Cup final. And 3 weeks today, the Premier League season starts for Spurs at home against Burnley. Anyway, if you're watching on YouTube, please do hit that subscribe button, like, share as well. And if you're listening to this on an audio platform, please do hit that follow button and leave a review if you can. As per normal, I've got 3 very special guests, and it is an international podcast. Joining us from Ireland today is Gareth. Gareth, how are you?
All good, Chris. Just coming off the back of the Ford Cup. I don't know if anybody watching had teams over it, but there was teams from England, Scotland, Ireland, Australia, America. So that was 5 days of football. So absolutely shattered. And I woke up today looking forward to the games and just a bit concerned now, I think. I know we'll get into the games, but we definitely are short, and that needs to be addressed as soon as.
We will get into it, Gareth. Joining us also from Australia is Blake. Blake, how are you?
Good day, everyone. You're good to be back on the show. It's been a while. Coincidentally, I was in Hong Kong and South Korea on holiday, and now the team are heading over there, which is great. So signings absolutely everywhere in Korea, which is amazing to see. But in terms of today's result, obviously a bit of a mixed bag. You want to see guys getting minutes in the legs, and as Gareth rightly said, we've got work to do in the transfer window still. So hopefully that happens quickly as the team flies out to Hong Kong soon. So, but great to be back on the show.
Great to have you here, Blake. And also joining us is Matt, all the way from New Jersey, USA. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Chris. It's it's a pleasure being on here again. I've been on with Blake before. It's nice working with Gareth. I've seen his stuff before. And, I'm ready to unpack the last 2 friendlies, what's been going on the last couple of months. It's, I got my extra big carry-on suitcase because there's so much stuff to unpack. I think we got to hit on, including that playmaker thing that you just spoke on.
Well, we're going to get into it. As I've mentioned, we're going to get into talking about both games. We're going to get all of your thoughts on the transfer window as well and the rest of the pre-season. Matt, I know you've always got a lot to say. Let's start by talking about the game that we have just played at Kenilworth Road. Luton Town 0, Tottenham Hotspur 0. Matt, let's start with you. What did you make of the game, the 0-0 draw against Luton?
I mean, I'm going through my notes, and it's like, it was pretty sloppy, to be perfectly blunt. The assessment of it is just right there. There really was a lot of loose passes, loose touches. I mean, we had a couple of nice bits of play. Like in the 5th minute, we had this nice interplay to earn a corner. I think it was Gray made a nice turn. I believe he was getting pressured, and then he made this nice swivel and sprayed it out wide to Tell, who then tried to get it in, but it turned into a corner, which that was nice. Vicario, a few minutes later, he played a nice long ball to Kudus, who made a nice couple of touches to get it under control and set us off. So we won another couple of corners. I felt that we were good getting to that final part, but I think we saw a lot of the same issues with the Ange when we were with Ange. The attacks just break down. Maybe that has to do with no attacking playmaker or any type of somebody who could pick a pass from deep. I know there's been plenty of links, but I don't think they're substantiated with Adam Wharton. I mean, he's a great player. There's also the Hayden Hackney, I believe, at Middlesbrough. He's a nice player from deep who could kind of create from deep. But for what we saw, it was we saw a lot of the same issues. We were susceptible to a lot of long balls, like very simple long balls. And this is not something new with Luton. Luton, that is who they are. They will play that long ball to get that knockdown using a physical type of play and everything. And they did get behind us a few times. They got past Danzo a few times. They got at Donnelly. I mean, yes, Donnelly's playing out of position as a left back. But, you know, it was way too many times that we were losing these balls to the channels and putting ourselves under a lot of pressure. And then we were sloppy, giving away silly like free kicks in tough positions. It really was not a good first half to watch. You know, it seemed like Luton was actually more prepared and much better. I mean, that makes sense. I believe the League One calendar, the actual season starts sooner than the Premier League, so they might be a week or two ahead of us. But still, I mean, Luton were all over us, and they were not letting us to play out. They were breaking out of our press pretty easily when they were building out, and then they would just hit these long diagonals. But it just seemed like we were not prepared. Maybe we were looking past them. I didn't see a lot of a real game plan, to be honest. And it's sad because, you know, we've been talking about this. We've been talking about trying to drill these things into our players, but we're getting there. But like I said, we get to that point and it breaks down. We get there and it breaks down. And so it's a tough watch, man. There were a few times where, you know, you're watching nothing, basically, just sloppy play. Like just a couple, you know, I know there was an elbow in the second half by one of the Luton players, which seemed a little dirty. But overall, I mean, I don't really think you could really focus on many real good things from this match. I mean, Kinski came in the second half. He did well. He made a really nice save. That was a really nice save, I believe, in like the 50th minute or so. And that was destined for the back of the net. And it's ridiculous that was the closest that either team came to scoring. I really felt disappointed that we didn't see anything. You know, just bits and pieces. Spence kind of got overrun a few times by I forget who their player was who was constantly going against him, but he kept losing duels, or he'd win them and then try to dribble out and then lose it again. And so it was really, really not great to watch. And like I said, that's why I kind of like turned off that last 20 minutes, because it was the same thing. And you saw at that point, the players were playing at like 60%. And I get it. It's a preseason thing. You want to get fit. You want to make sure that you're ready. You don't want to get injured. So I totally understand it. But at the same time, it did show a lot of the same problems. And it's the same problems we've had since, I don't know, maybe last year, most of last year, when we don't have a playmaker in there like Madison, who could really pick up the ball from deep, make one or two passes, spray them around, take these little touches and kind of bring players in and then kind of move it out from there. I just don't think we have that in our squad. Like, we don't have that profile. It's nice that we have Kudus and he has a certain skill set, like where we can engage players one-on-one and break through them. But, you know, if a team's still in a low block, you're still going to need a little bit more. You're going to need another tool in the belt. And I think that Madison is that tool. A Morgan Gibbs-White may be that tool, some kind of deep lying playmaker. Again, that kid from Middlesbrough, I believe we were linked from him for numerous times. I believe almost every major club is linked to him, because there's no one's going to pay $100 million for Adam Wharton from Palace. So, I mean, that would be the good thing for that would help us. That really would, if we have that deep line playmaker and somebody who could link play up the field. But I don't know if we really, one, can afford both of those, and two, can hold those players in the team, and we would have to get rid of more players before we bring these players in. So we're kind of like in a double-edged sword. It's like we see our problems, and we see our problems on both ways, and we can't really get out of our problems unless something major happens. Like something needs to be done. But yeah, for the Luton the match, it was pretty poor. I honestly think that Luton was the better side. Yeah, I mean, there really isn't not much to sum up. I mean, I even wrote it on my second half notes, like not much to write about. Slow start. Just it's I'm sorry, like Chris, I don't know how you guys like reporters and could sit and watch these things all day, because that was rough, man. That was like certain points you're just like, okay.
Matt, I tell you what, I expected a lot more from these preseason games, and when you play 3 League One teams in Reading, and of course we won that one 2-0 last week. It seemed like a very professional performance to me, and like I said in the intro, it's all about getting minutes into the legs and it's all about fitness. But I think a lot of fans expected entertaining football in certainly these games today against Wickham and against Luton. You know, drawing 0-0, and one of the things that was really disappointing for me today is the fact that we didn't really test former Spurs goalkeeper Josh Keeley, who of course we have just sold to Luton Town, so that was very disappointing. To go back to your points and your questions, the League One season actually starts this coming Friday on the 1st of August. The League One sides have actually been back for 5 weeks, and you know, Spurs have been back for a couple of weeks, but there's no excuses really. A lot of these players are a lot better, and they're all internationals, and you know, we all want to see the best, and we all want to see entertaining football, and most importantly, we want to see our team score goals. We'll get Gareth's thoughts on the tactical side in a minute. And also, while you've been talking, Matt, James Maddison has taken to Instagram, posting a picture of himself at Hotspur Way today, looking on at that Wickham game, and he's also put an egg timer on there. So you would expect that he is not very far away from being, you know, putting that Tottenham Hotspur shirt on again. You know, we may see him in Hong Kong, we may see him in South Korea. Gareth, let's come to you. Let's get your thoughts on the Luton 0-0 draw today. And I know you are our tactical guy on this channel. Talk to us about Thomas Frank's tactics, because there are quite a few people, and I've spoken to people in the stadium today, and I know we're all, you know, we're only at the pre-season point. We haven't started the league season yet, and some people are already saying, and I think Matt alluded to it, you know, we're not being entertained at the moment, and it is a little bit boring. What did you make of today's game?
Well, look, I mean, Matt made a good point, and you've confirmed that with the League One. They did mention that at the end of the game, that their season starts on Friday. And look, just from a coach's point of view, see, when you have like a break at Christmas and you maybe have 2 weeks off at youth level, the players come back and someone looked at them or kicked a football before, because they've had 2 weeks off. We know, you know, no consistency in there, and training's all about patterns and how you want to set up for a game. So, you know, you would expect Luton's play to be more intense, more aggressive, you know, getting around the pitch quicker, being a bit sharper on the ball. And you mentioned quality, Chris, but when you're not training, and a lot of these players have been off for weeks and weeks and weeks, and probably been on, you know, not doing much at all, resting, and you know, the luxury lifestyles that Premier League footballers have now. You know, it does take a bit of time to get back on it. The other thing I would like to point out as well, Chris, is, you know, the team at the moment, I'm not too concerned about the actual play, because it is pre-season. We've only had a couple of games, but it's the lack of options that the manager's got. You know, Jamie Donnelly has to play at left back because Udogie's got injured, and there's no sublet. There's nobody else that can play there. You know, Ben Davis is clearly now viewed as the centre half by Ange, and I would say the same by Thomas Frank. You know, so you've had to put Jamie Donnelly in there, who's more of a midfielder, and at left back. You know, there's no number 9 in the starting lineup today, because, you know, Solanke's injured as well. So, I mean, there's major issues there in terms of personnel. So, you know, as the team that we're going to see start on the opening day of the season, or at the end of the transfer window, you know, you would like to think not. And I think that's where the bigger concern at the minute for me is, you know, I would imagine you'll start to see more patterns of play towards the end of the, you know, the pre-season tour, because more players will be back, more players will have more minutes, and, you know, really, to me, the Super Cup's kind of our first game of the season. You know, it's not a pre-season game. It's actually listed on the Premier League's website as a pre-season friendly. But me and you's going out there, Chris, and I'm telling you, it's not going to be like the Luton game today, where everyone's kind of maybe a bit more relaxed. everyone's going to want to win that game. That will be about a result. So, there isn't a lot of time. And I think that's where that buzz of Bilbao has kind of wore off now with the fans, because they're concerned for the upcoming season. There hasn't been enough done to this point. The Gibbs White thing seems to be at an impasse. We're no further forward. It isn't off yet, but we're no further forward, and that's 2 weeks since that's passed. And there doesn't really seem to be much movement elsewhere other than a potential deal for Polinia. But as Matt pointed out, that involves possibly getting players out before that can happen. So I think that's where the bigger concern from the fan base will be, Chris, is if Thomas Frank's going into the season with this kind of squad, will it be much different? A manager can only change so much. You need the players to be able to do what you really want. And there is going to be a transition period, because Thomas Frank and Ange Postecoglou's styles of play are completely different. So it's not going to be easy for the players to just, start playing a completely different way. So I'm not surprised that the patterns aren't really there at the moment, that we're not really seeing. But I will be concerned if we're going into the first game of the season and we're struggling to not attack the gear. As you say, there's a lack of a playmaker at the moment. That's not really the manager's fault, because there is injuries to the likes of Kulusevski, Madison, Bergvall. So there has been players not available. So look, it's pain at the moment, Chris, but my confidence will be that we'll get better when certain players come back, and we really need things to pick up in the transfer market. But I did watch a show last year, Chris, where I think it was all these agents were talking. It was one of them Sky Sports shows, and they says you wouldn't believe what can happen in the last 2-3 weeks of a transfer window. Opportunities open up that weren't there. You could potentially see a domino effect with the likes of I think most of the things they say is it's like domino effect transfers. If Isak goes to Liverpool, Newcastle all of a sudden need a striker. So, they start looking for one. Vissa, who was linked with us, is now looking to go to Newcastle, and things can open up. So, look, the concern for me at the moment is the Super Cup. I'm not sure, Chris, we're going to be where we want to be. I think we're probably going to see a lot of lit business done, like we've seen with Spurs in the past. But that's often resulted, Chris, in slow starts. And, recovering from slow starts can be difficult sometimes.
Well, before that Super Cup final, as Gareth mentions, we've got 3 very tough pre-season games coming up against Arsenal, Newcastle and Bayern Munich. I don't think they get any easier than that. Blake, let's get your thoughts on the Luton game. But before we do, I just want to give you some comments here. Gareth just said it's pain at the moment. I feel like it shouldn't be pain when 1, you're Europa League winners, and 2, you've just changed the manager. It should feel exciting when a new manager takes over, despite what happened with Ange Postecoglou. There's also a comment here saying we sacked Ange Postecoglou for this, meaning the style of play, and as Matt alluded to, boring football. There are a number of comments, including a number of comments online, stating that we were outplayed today by a League One side. There's also a comment here. It says, I'm calm, I'm just realistic. We narrowly survived relegation last season. We have added 1 player to a struggling squad. And as Gareth mentioned, we have basically just added 1 first-team player in Mohamed Kudus in this transfer window so far, and I feel like there is a lot to do. Are you getting concerned about, we've played 3 pre-season friendlies so far. Is it, should we be getting concerned, or is it the fact that Spurs need to just do a lot more work in this transfer window? I know we're going to talk about the transfer window, and a lot of teams around us are doing a lot more than we have done so far. And, in all honesty, I think that Spurs had a lot of work to do at the start of the window, but we probably have more catching up to do now that everyone around us has done so much.
Yeah, it's 2 really good points that are brought up there. And I think first and foremost is that when a new manager comes in, you've got to implement change, and that's obviously going to take time. Given how short pre-season is before the season starts, as Gareth was touching on, it's hard for a coach to come in and implement it straight away. So I think the first part of that is that this is a very tricky thing to say as a Spurs fan, but patience is going to be key for this pre-season. And as Gareth touched on, two very different styles of play, which is going to take some getting used to. I think that it's the same problem that we came back to last season, in the sense of we just don't have that attacking force in the front third, And that's probably where the biggest problem lies. But I think there's other issues to address too. Without James Maddison, there's not much creativity there. It feels like for Romero and Van der Ven to be a successful pairing, and a better number 6 needs to come in just to solidify that midfield. But then there's just other problems, as you said, Udogie being the only left back, and you're now relying on Jamie Donnelly to then fill that role. So there's obviously problems, and I do appreciate that he's trying players at the moment, and that's just going to take time to implement change. But it is a concern, because I think we do need to do a bit more business than what we've done. We've obviously got Kudus. He's been a fantastic addition. You can see a spark there already. I think he fits the Spurs mould, but the Gibbs White saga has dragged on far too long. Is it time to move on to somebody else if we feel like if he's joined Forest on their preseason tour? Is it perhaps time to look at another option? I do think he's also a good fit for Spurs, so that's a frustrating situation there as well. But in terms of today's game with Luton, we did get outplayed, and I think it was frustrating to see, because we are trying to play a certain way, and things are trying. You can see that it's a completely different structure to how Ange wanted to play. There was a lot more pragmatism there, a bit of a 4-4-2 setup, and lots of little inward passes in and out. And that's obviously trying to create something, but then it just breaks down in that final play in the attacking part of the ground. So there is work to be done. I'm not going to hang my head in shame and say, oh, it's the be-all and end-all. But to be held goalless to a League One side is a little bit concerning. So we got a lot to address with the remaining time in the transfer window, I believe.
Blake, what do you make of the decision that the football club and Thomas Frank made only a couple of days ago to have this friendly against Wickham at Hotspur Way? Of course, it is in order to give as many players minutes in the legs ahead of the tour of Asia, and it will be interesting to see whether any notable players don't get on that plane for any reason, whether they're going to be sold or moved on. Now, before we do get your thoughts on that, Destiny Udogie was actually left out caution because he was feeling something in the warm-up at Luton, and Dominic Solanke picked up a minor ankle injury. But apart from those and the injured players that we already know about, there have been a lot of minutes for a lot of players, which can only be a positive thing, can't it?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I think it was a really good call to actually add that second game in. Being a coach myself in a different code of football here in Australia, I think it's very, very important to get. We always talk in the theory of around playing more games, and in training you want to be playing more games. In practice matches you want to be playing more, and in general players want to be playing. So I think it's only good to get minutes in the legs, regardless of what age it is. It was great to see playing youth, and I think, as you said, just getting minutes in those legs was really important. So adding that Wickham schedule in, I think, was really key today. And the theory behind it is the more you're playing, the more minutes you're getting in, the more change you can implement quickly. And I think it's great. Like, they call Thomas Frank the professor for a reason. He's obviously got a theory to the madness, and having that second game is only going to put us in good stead, I think. And despite it being on the same day, it's a bit left of field. It's a little bit different, a little bit unorthodox, but I think it was the right decision because we need as many minutes as we can get into these legs before we go to Asia, take on Arsenal, Newcastle, Bayern, and they're going to be massive challenges leading into PSG. We need as much preparation as we can get. So I do think it was a positive thing that he did today.
Matt, let's come to you. This is the starting 11 that started at Hotspur Way against Wickham. And the reason I'm going to do this in this order is so people can understand why these players then didn't feature in the Luton game. So the starting 11 at Hotspur Way against Wickham was as follows: Austin, Porro, Romero, Vlaskovic, Davis, Bentancur, Bergvall, Sarr, Odegaard, Richarlison and Heung-min Son. And then the starting 11 at Luton today: Vicario as captain, obviously in goal, Spence, Danso, Van der Ven, Udogie, Basuma, Gray, Moore, Johnson, Tell and Mohamed Kudus. Now, I ought to also mention that at Hotspur Way today, Bentancur was meant to play ahead of George Abbott, but he was ill, so that's why he then didn't feature, and then Abbott replaced him in the starting 11. What did you make of the way that this has been done by the football club, Matt? Obviously we've got Blake's thoughts there about us using so many players today, because of course, as I already mentioned as well, the under-21s were in action away at Woking. So a number of the development squad got minutes either at Hotspur way, at Luton, or away at Woking today. So many players got minutes today. But what did you make of the way that Thomas Frank has dealt with this situation? Because would it have been easier in some ways? People are talking about the style of play. People are talking about the results. Thomas Frank, I suppose, could have made it easier for himself today by getting a result at Luton. Would it have been better us, beating Luton 3-4, 5-0 away rather than these players getting minutes in the legs?
I definitely say no. I think the club and Thomas Frank made a very good decision because, like Blake just spoke about, Blake hit the nail on the head. The players need minutes, and considering all the impetus during the offseason about how we need to challenge on multiple fronts, we're going to need players to be fully fit and ready to roll at any moment's notice. We got to be challenging on 4 fronts. That's not including the Super Cup. So, it is very smart to get these players out there, these specific players. And if you notice, they switched up the center back pairings. I kind of like these center back pairings a little bit more. I really did enjoy the match against Wickham. I think of the 2 matches, that was definitely the better match to view. You spoke about Bentancur being pulled out because of a sickness, I believe. He wasn't feeling very well, and George Abbott came in. George Abbott was very, very good. He was not the player that I expected him to be. You've heard bits and pieces about him in preseason about him being very pacey. So you kind of put 2 and 2 together. You'd be like, oh, this guy's a winger. This guy's just going to burn down the way. No, he was right in the thick of things, and he really did very well. He progressed. He progressed the ball well. He made a couple of nice plays in there. I really liked the way we played the setup in the first match. I believe it was, I don't know if it was Gareth or Blake. They said that that sometimes they pressed in a 4-4-2. That is one thing that we've noticed. We've seen in the Brentford that they even though they're set up in a 4-2-3-1, sometimes in this case, Bergville would come up and go alongside Richarlison and press in a 2. So you have a 4-2-4 type setup. But yeah, I thought Bergville was active. Oh, I even made a note. Abbott was everywhere. I heard him involved in almost all the good bits of pieces of play that we did. And that was impressive because, like I said, I was expecting something else from somebody else, maybe some of these bigger names. The most important thing is that we have just seen Sarr become the new Frank Lampard. He's going to knock in 25 goals for us this season. So we don't need anything else. He has that uncanny ability to be right there when it's just for a touch. We've seen it. Like even his very first goal with Spurs against United, he was just in the perfect spot. I think he just has this uncanny ability to know exactly where the ball is going to be, which is a fantastic thing to know. Remember Pippo Inzaghi in for AC Milan. He knew exactly where the ball was going to be. Mind you, he was offside 90% of the time. But he always knew where that ball was going to be. And I think we're seeing that same thing with Sarr, not in the, of course, Inzaghi's striker, fantastic striker. Sarr is a young player, but I think we're seeing that from him. Brandon Austin, yeah, that the goal that he conceded, that first goal, that was a howler spectacular. That was right at him. You're third choice and you're homegrown, so I guess you're not going anywhere, Brandon. So it's cool, I guess. But I think we did very good keeping the pressure up. We won a lot of corners. I think I spoke about the Luton match where we were constantly keeping this pressure up and winning corner after corner. And to be honest, this match was a lot more exciting simply because we were really attacking. It was breaking down in the end, but we had these nice bits of play, these nice these combinations to create space for these long passes. I think we did really well, but as soon as they scored, then we got nervy. And then we've seen it before with Spurs. You know, like when we concede a goal, all of a sudden you're like, they forget how to play for like 10 minutes. I don't know if that's just like something that they're going to work on in the preseason. I'm sure they will. And then the second half, they started off so poorly as well. Like, you know, it just, again, they didn't come out of the blocks, and Luton really, I'm sorry, Wickham got a goal, which was deserved because they put us under pressure. Then, you know, for the most part, we made some changes. We brought on some of these young kids. A couple of these kids really impressed me. This Timon Thompson kid, he was involved in a couple of nice bits of play. I believe he was involved in the build-up to Sarr's second goal. You know, I heard his name called a few times. You see him pop up. He was kind of like very pacey, very direct, which is nice, which is what we want to see. Williams Barnett, he came on later on in the match, and he showed a little bit of promise. I know we've heard about him in the academy, ripping things up. So, but yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think we easily win that match if Brandon Austin doesn't let that first goal in, because if he doesn't let that first goal in, I think we continue pile-on pressure, getting a few more goals. And so, I mean, like I said, I got some key points. Sarr was great. He's always in the great positions. George Abbott, you know, he played like he belonged. I got to be honest. He played like a Premier League player. And there is no greater compliment you could give to a young player than that you looked in place. You looked the player. You looked the part. Bergville, he did good. Linking play. He was kind of buzzing around. Romero and Luca, I do like them in defense together. They kind of, you know, Romero's very aggressive. I believe he won the ball in the lead up to the second goal. You know, pressing, you know, like he always does. He presses into the front, into the attacking half, wins a tough challenge. Ball bounces around, and then we were on our way to get to create that second goal. But yeah, the first game with Wickham was a lot more enjoyable. I think you saw a lot more of the patterns that Gareth was talking about. I know he mentioned the different triangles, and, you know, it's going to take time to develop these relationships with players. And, you know, I go here, you go there, I pass here, you pass there. They're going to work that out. But I think in that first match, you saw a lot more cohesiveness and an understanding of the system. Maybe that has to do with those players being a little bit further along in their training and their understanding of the system. But I just think that if you watch the first match, just the first match, you'd be like, hey, this is a great day. And then you see the second match and you're like, oh, that's interesting. So, but it was a good match. The Wickham match, I think you saw a lot of what we're trying to do. And so I had more faith in that, in seeing that. That was better. That was a lot better to watch.
Gareth, today, do you think that Thomas Frank is happy with the performances of his players today over the two games?
Chris, I'll answer your question, but like the lads made good points there about the two games was good, beneficial for getting a lot of players' minutes. But I have a theory that maybe this wasn't maybe a club decision, and it wouldn't surprise me if there was a chat amongst Thomas Frank and the coaching staff. They say, look, we're not doing enough in the market here. Maybe put on this second game to show the club how short we are. Because it kind of come out of nowhere and it just happened. Now, obviously, he was going to benefit from the minutes anyway. But if you think about all the players that played, how many of them are actually going to be here when the season starts? Because a lot of them are going to go on loan to our clubs. So is it really going to be beneficial to Thomas Frank if George Abbott's getting lots of minutes in pre-season? Probably not, because he's probably going to go on a loan somewhere. You know, you talk about some of the other players that featured as well. The likes of there's talk about Mikey Morgan out on loan possibly. You know, Devine's played a lot. You know, there's a number of Langshear's played. There's talk about him maybe going on loan. So there's a number of players that have had to be used that maybe you would think wouldn't be maybe in a match day squad for the Premier League. And I don't know if he's maybe put this on as he was going to benefit out of players getting minutes. It's an easy excuse. Maybe this is we spoke about it a lot, Chris, on I think the last time I was on with Foxy, you know, about having two players in every position. You know, two ready-made players in every position. It's just not there at the moment. Obviously, there's some players to come back for injury. But at the moment, I think Thomas Frank will be concerned that going on the Super Cup in 2.5 weeks' time, the squad's really no different it was last year. And you have to think a lot of the players that are playing as well, the likes of Son, Richarlison, Basuma, there's question marks over their future. So will they even be here in a few weeks' time? there's talk that after the tour that the Son thing could move. I think it's pretty well known that Basuma, Spurs are looking to shift them on. Richarlison the same. It's just about getting the right fees and the right clubs for them they want to go to. So I think he'll be concerned at the minute that it's probably not where he envisaged that they be. I think when the Gibbs White thing was agreed, they envisaged him being in these games and going on the tour. That's not obviously going to happen now. He's on another tour with Nottingham Forest, and you might have seen more movement around all our players. Once we got, I think at the minute there's just that the Gibbs White thing's obviously something they're focusing on. Has that led them away from all our targets at the moment just to get this done, because it is a very tricky deal, as all they're focused on trying to sort out the issues we not on Forest, or are they preparing a kiss themselves to go to Forest? But at the moment we're just completely in the dark about that. So to answer your question, Chris, on the two performances, I think he'll be realistic, and they know how far they're in the preseason, how many players are playing out of position, how many youngsters are playing that maybe won't be part of the 20 match day, the 20 players in the match day squad come the end of the transfer window. So we do this a lot every year. It seems to be the same, Chris, but we seem to wait, and then we panic. I think one of the issues at the minute, Chris, from the fan base is they're seeing, as you mentioned, a lot of people are concerned that Liverpool have bought a lot of players, Man City have bought players before their Club World Cup, Arsenal now getting a striker in and have strengthened in our areas. Newcastle are the one at the minute that are probably panicking because if they lose Isak, they're slightly concerned. But Man United have done decent business, and there's talk of them going on for a striker as well. So I think a lot of people are just concerned that we aren't doing enough. And the interview that we talked about, Chris, with Daniel Levy and Vinay, that needs to be consistent. Because you were starting to think when the Gibbs White thing was coming about that maybe they are going to take it serious. But now we've had that bump, I think everyone's now starting to feel like we're going to be short again. And how many times do we say it, Chris? I mean, you've done a few deadline day shows before where we're going on to the season. We, think and repeat already, because if we get a couple of injuries here and there, we're stuck. And I think that's one of the things that Thomas Frank maybe thought about when he put this game on today, that we've got a few injuries to players, and this is the kind of squads we're having to put out in the games. Maybe it's a message to the board that we need players on, because, Chris, me and you have been so excited about this Super Cup for weeks and weeks, and we don't want to go out there feeling that we haven't got an opportunity to beat PSG because we haven't done the work in the transfer market to get a positive result against PSG. So Thomas Frank will be concerned that 3 League One performances and it's been workmanlike, and Matt's given a lot of good points there, but he was talking about nice touches and nice flicks and a nice diagonal ball and one in a corner, and Matt wants to be coming on talking about great goals and great free flowing football. And whilst we understand them where the club's at pre-season, if the results aren't great on the pre-season tour now against Newcastle and Arsenal, and we go to Bayern Munich and it's poor, what's the kind of mood going to be in the camp going into that PSG game? We're going to have to try and get ourselves up for it. And for me, the PSG game is the biggest game of the season, because it's an hour chance they won a European trophy. To go back to back in trophies, to get that mentality back that, we can win things at this club. And how often do you get an opportunity to win a trophy in your first game of a season? It doesn't come up that often. And I know people make a mockery of the Community Shield, but for me, the Super Cup's a bigger competition. It's a European final. So for me, if the club don't give Thomas Frank the support that he needs over the next few weeks, then I'll not be criticising Thomas Frank. If we lose the Super Cup game, I'll be criticising the board for not giving him the support that we all know he needs.
Blake, we have heard from Vinay Venkatesham, we've heard from Daniel Levy, we've heard from Thomas Frank. They've all said the same thing. They've all been very aligned in saying the same thing. We want to be fighting on all fronts. And Gareth is right. And if you go onto social media right now, everyone is talking about the transfer window and the lack of activity of Spurs bringing in. And, I'm going to mention Ange Postecoglou at this point as well. He said in the last couple of press conferences as Spurs boss that this transfer window is meant to be all about experienced players. Surely Thomas Frank himself is a little bit disappointed the fact that he hasn't got those players to go on the plane, because you would have expected, the way that we went through that real high spell of, Spurs essentially spending £120 million in the week. I know the Morgan Gibbs White deal hasn't been done yet. I think a lot of us are living in hope that one does get over the line eventually, and every single journalist and so-called people in the know are all stating that they believe that this deal is still going to be done, but it is just taking time. I'm personally hoping it does get done because he's a great player and he would come straight into this team and make a real difference. But Thomas Frank at this point, when the players are just about to board the plane to go to Asia, even him, you would have thought that he would have been thinking that he would have had a lot more players in the door at this point.
I think you're absolutely spot on, Chris. I think he would have taken this job on the presumption that he was going to get really big names, Premier League proven names through the door. And that hasn't happened as of yet, other than Kudus. Let's be brutally honest about it, that we've picked up a lad from Japan. He looks good in the first team in Japan. I did see a game that he had against the Socceroos, and he looked really good. So that's a really positive thing. But again, that's another signing for the future. That's something for down the track. What we need at the moment is Premier League proven players, experience through the door to support and fight on all fronts, which is exactly what these guys have been talking about. You see the Vinay interview, you see with Daniel Levy, and Thomas Frank wants to fight on all 4 competitions. That's the expectation they've set after releasing Ange Postecoglou from his duties. The messaging then became, well, we didn't fight on all 4 fronts with Ange, so now it's time to get in someone else and that can fight on all 4 fronts. Is that happening at this point in time for the season? It begs the question because we just do not have the squad depth. And Gareth, you're absolutely spot on. I'm not going to be blaming Thomas Frank for our results, as I didn't blame Ange for our results, because I think he does not have the tools to be able to fight on all 4 fronts at this point in time. If we get the Morgan Gibbs...
What's realistic? With this current squad, what is realistic that we can do?
I would say a top half finish in the Premier League. We get deep into maybe a cup competition or 2, but on all 4 fronts, it's just not going to be possible. It's all well and good at the moment. It's July in the Northern Hemisphere. It's summer at the moment, and it's all happy days, which is what Thomas Frank's been talking about in his interviews. But when it gets to the dark, cold days of Christmas and January and February, and injuries hit the squad, and there's work to be done, and we're still in contention for competitions, I just don't feel we're going to have the squad depth to be able to fight on all 4 fronts. It's just not going to be there. I would have said in this window, it would have been realistic to get 3 or 4 really, really good Premier League proven experienced signings through the door. And that would be the absolute minimum, because there's we were just talking before about having in every position across the pitch, you want to have 2 players that can fill that role. And the third player is homegrown talent or someone that's emerging. But at the moment, it feels like, we've got 1 player there. We've got, if your doggy's unavailable, then we're going to have to make shift a left back, and we're going to have. The reason that Thomas Frank has replaced Ange is because he's going to be expected to pull rabbits out of a hat on a regular basis, just as Poch was, and just as Nuno was at times when in his short tenure. And Conte and Mourinho wouldn't put up with that because they are win now managers and expect to have experience in their squad. So I think it's just a dangerous precedent to set to say that you want to fight for Champions League and win the Champions League and win the league if you're not willing to fill all spots and make sure we have good depth.
Before we go any further, let's hear from Thomas Frank. This is what he made of today's performance.
Well, thanks for joining us. Busy day.
Yeah, very busy day.
Okay, look, 2-2 against Wickham, 0-0 here against Luton. What were you looking for? Are you happy with how the day's gone?
Overall, okay, happy. I would say the big takeaways on the positive side is that I think we got more or less 75 minutes into to most of the players, and that was the reason why we played 2 mixed teams and also subbed on all the youngsters in the end of both games. So on the physical, minute-wise, box ticked, happy with that. We start with the Wickham game, positive. I felt the high pressure and regaining of the ball was very successful in many ways throughout the game. I think we regained it, I don't know how many times, but I think we created 6-7 very dangerous situations where we should have done even more and scored the second goal from Pape. Also in the first game against Wickham, also runs in behind were good, so we were really focused on that. So that was the those are two positive things. We big focus on how can we see defend well, and we gave two goals away we shouldn't give away against Wickham. Scored 2 good goals from Pape. So the positive also in that game was Pape. If you should go into the Luton game, I think that was the game where I felt okay. You can see there's a bit to be worked on still. That is the two mixed teams that a little bit out of sync. The boys put everything in it. They positive, head down, working hard, but those connections and relationships and get it to work was definitely not fluent. But it's good to have something to work with.
So a couple of team news bits we need to clear up. Obviously Dom didn't feature here, so what's the situation with Dom?
Dom got a minor ankle issue and nothing we're worried about. We're just precaution for today.
And of course Destiny, you took him out late and Jamie Donnelly ended up playing left back. What's the situation with Destiny?
Yeah, Dest felt something in the warm-up, so we were just again precautions. We just wanted to be on top of that.
Excellent. Okay, so look, tour's next. I'm sure you're excited by that. Look, in a few days' time, we're playing Arsenal.
Yeah. Of course, we're looking forward to go on the tour. I think it was a good day today. Now home, a good night's sleep for everyone, and then we're ready to go on tour. And of course, a fantastic game against Arsenal on Thursday. And
just quickly, obviously, look, 8 days away. Everyone's new, new head coach, new coaching staff. How important is this 8 days when you're completely away from everything together as a team, as a squad? How important?
I think it's extremely important that, one thing is at the training ground. Well, of course, we get to know each other, but there's meetings going on, so many things happening, double sessions and so on. Now we just have a tiny bit more time where we can interact better, staff, players and staff.
We wish you all the best and we'll see you in Hong Kong.
Thank you very much.
Flake, let's come back to you. What do you make of Thomas Frank's comments there on both games, and what do you make of the appointment of Thomas Frank?
Didn't sound overly convinced that it was a good day by the second part there. Yeah. I think there were some positive signs, obviously, in the Wickham game. Saw both goals from Sarr. Matt had a good point about maybe he's the next Frank Lampard. That would be nice. But in all honesty, he didn't sound overly convinced in that interview that things were good. And there's, I think what is positive about that interview is that he completely acknowledges that there's things to work on and that we've got work to do. I just worry that the club is going to expect him to just be able to develop what's already there rather than trying to get experienced players in. And Gareth might be onto something about adding the coaching staff, adding that second game in just to show and demonstrate to the board that maybe we do need to add some depth to the squad. But he had some good points about, obviously going into Asia, we're going to Hong Kong. This is an opportunity for our staff to come together and how we communicate and bring the squad together with staff. That's going to be very important. But I think it was a pretty dire assessment of what's happening at the moment. And he can see it unfolding. He's not a silly man by any stretch. He's a very intelligent person. You can just see that by every interview he partakes. And in terms of his appointment, the last time I came on was the day of Ange's sacking. I was a very emotional Australian. Very, very emotional day to see Ange depart the club, being such a long-term supporter of this football club and seeing an Aussie take charge and win us a trophy. It was one of the best days of my life, to be honest. And then seeing Thomas at the time, Thomas Frank's appointment didn't overly excite me, but I'm happy to be a man of my word and say that I got it wrong. And I think he's actually the right fit for what we want to be doing moving forward. It's just a matter of the club giving him the tools to succeed, which let's argue for argue's sake. It didn't happen for Ange. It hasn't happened for any manager previously. So when we show ambition and we go to push on, I think that's when you can then believe Daniel and Vinay's comments around challenging for the Premier League and the Champions League. But until that moment in time, I think we're just existing at this stage. But I hope I'm wrong. I don't come on this show to be negative. I'm a positive person, Chris and co. This is just me being just a pinch of realism at the moment. I think it's required, and I know that there's work to be done. I think we all can acknowledge that. I just hope that we have ambition going into this season, and Gareth's right. We've got the Super Cup to look forward to. We don't want to go into that game anxious. We want to go into that game fighting fit and ready to go and try and win a second trophy in as many games.
Yeah, Blake, that's a good point. I feel like a lot of our regular guests, it's very important to be realistic. I know some people get called negative, some people get called over positive, but it is about realism. I feel like I've had that conversation actually today about 10 times, what you've just mentioned there, about, the board's expectations of Thomas Frank. Is it expected that he gets the best out of players or tries to get the best out of players rather than going out in the transfer market? But I believe that, you just need to take a look at that squad, and you still would hope that the board, everyone at the football club would think that we still need a lot more in this transfer window. Matt, let's talk about one of our summer signings, Mohamed Kudus, because in the opening 7 minutes or so, he did put a couple of great deliveries in against Luton today. Of course, he was very impressive away at Reading last week, involved in both goals last week. What have you made of him? And are you excited about him in a Spurs shirt this season?
I thought he played very well. I think he's played very well during the preseason. He's delivered exactly what we expected from him. He is fearless. He is a constant threat. He wants to continuously get the ball at his feet, engage, and just basically embarrass other players, create the space, pick his head up, and then distribute. I mean, we saw him do that a few times during the Reading match. We saw him do that a few times today. He was in a multiple of different positions today. He played across. He played on the left side. He played on the right side, and I believe at certain times he did come into the middle. So I think that's more of his role, which he excels in, where he's able to float in between and find those pockets of space. I think Kudus. I don't think you should really. I know a lot of Spurs fans are kind of looking at last season with him in West Ham, and Spurs were a mess last year. But even being the mess that we were not the mess that West Ham was. They went from Julian Lopetegui, who is very headstrong and constantly fought with a lot of the senior players there, create a very toxic workplace over there, and then he got sacked. I know there were numerous occasions with Kudus and him having like words at halftime. And then afterwards, it was Graham Potter. So I don't think too much should be like put into that last year. Look at the previous year, and look at his skill set. His skill set is still there. If you look at the metrics around him, he was still like one of the most active engagers besides Jeremy Doku. I think he would try at least 8.3 take-ons per match or something, some insane amount, which is like, I think 3 times the amount that any of our players did last year. So it's clearly we were looking for this skill set. And I believe we found exactly what we need for when we get into those situations where even with a Madison, even with a playmaker in the system, we still just don't have that ability to break down a really stubborn low block. And, we've seen it before. We've seen like these very low blocks, these organized Premier League teams, and they are extremely difficult. They are drilled well. And that's where Kudus really comes in, because you have somebody like Madison or a Kulusevski who could draw a player in, distribute it out to Kudus, and then Kudus has a one-on-one with a fullback. And I don't know of any fullback who really wants to be in a one-on-one with Kudus, unless it's like the second coming of Roberto Carlos or like Cafu. I'm going to fancy Kudus' chances to win that duel 9 times out of 10. So I'm very happy with him. He's more than just the winger, which I think that a lot of Spurs fans were looking at him. And when he came over from West Ham and in Ajax, and he can play. He is comfortable playing across any of the front positions. And not so much about a striker, but I think he plays a very nice number 10 in that he could find those pockets of space. And I'm really happy with his integration in the team. And I think it will be very good to have him for when we encounter those low blocks. And that's the thing. We're bringing different players in with different skill sets. So it's not just one cookie cutter type way of playing. And I understand that's a Thomas Frank way of playing. We want to do there's that term, horses for courses. So you want to pick your right players. If you're playing a more physical team, you want to play with more physicality or something like that. He's trying to set the team up in a way to have our skill set emphasized and to eliminate their threat. So I understand why Kudus is brought in. I think he does check those boxes for what we're looking for with that one-on-one specialist. People love to say, I think there's some other podcasts who run their mouths, oh, we need a dribbly winger. We need a dribbly winger. And it's just like, no, we just need a guy who's like direct and aggressive. Like, that's what it is. When City got Doku a few years back, like, that was the player that we needed. And we knew we needed that player then. So we got it now, which is good. I just think we need a little bit more. But Mohamed Kudus, I think he's done great. I think he's going to be a great signing for us. I think that he will contribute anywhere from 15 to 25 goal contributions, either goals and assists, across all the competitions this year, simply because of his versatility, his ability, and his directness. He wants to go at the players. He wants to keep going. So that's something that we really need in our players, that like ruthlessness, like, I just beat you, I'm going to beat you again and again and again and again and again until basically you wave that white flag. So I think it's a really good signing, Chris. I really do think that we got him for good money too. There was a lot of talk about this supposed Tottenham tax or whatever. I don't know what they're babbling about, like it's some kind of like real rivalry or whatever. But yeah, no, we got him for 55. They wanted like 65, 70 or something like that. And then he just basically said, I want to go to Spurs. And that was that. So I'm very happy with the signing. I think it's a good step in the right direction to make sure that we're not going to encounter those same issues that we had, where we just could not break these teams down. So,
Gareth, I want to come to you on 2 points. What did you make of the attacking players against Luton today, in particular Moore, Johnson, Tell, and Mohamed Kudus? And also, what I wanted to ask you about is, were you surprised on how many times today against Luton that we gave the ball away so carelessly?
The attacking players, Kudus was definitely the one that looked the most dangerous. He, as Matt says, he's a very direct player. He likes to run at people. And look, and I think Gary Neville speaks about this a lot. He says, when you're up against wingers as a fullback, he says the worst thing that you want was somebody running at you constantly, because it's just a long day. And they don't always have to work, but just that confidence to keep doing it. That'll be the one. And I think a lot of players, wingers, if they have a bad game, they lose confidence and they lose that belief that they can beat players. So I think Kudus is one of those players. I think he's quite fond of himself. I think he fancies himself and he backs himself that he can beat people. And you need that wee bit of arrogance to be a successful winger or a successful footballer. Johnson, there was a clip going around of him. He actually took somebody on for once on the left side, but obviously he's not that type of player. I think the issue with Brennan is he's a confidence player. And I'm not sure if it's going to work off the left with Johnson. That'll be my main concern. I think he's very much an old school winner, first time cross, and he's obviously a very good finisher when he gets he's a knack at getting under the right areas. I think he's one of those players that I said, remember like a Dirk Kuyt for Liverpool, where he didn't really look brilliant, but he contributed a lot of goals. Like, he scored that one goal in the final for us in Bilbao. There is players like that. We've seen in the Premier League and we've seen them at Spurs. You're maybe not the most flashy or the most brilliant players they watch, but very, very good player to have in the squad, because he's a very good source of goals. I think his first season he had the most assists, second season most goals. So look, if Brennan keeps scoring goals, I'll not be too disappointed about his overall output in terms of beating players. I think the fact that Kudus is in the squad now, that gives us a different option to what we've had. I think Tell, from what I've seen, Chris, I'm not inspired by Matisse Tell. I think sometimes he does try to beat players, but I don't know. He doesn't beat. He tries it, but he doesn't get past many of them. And I think
we know though, Gareth, this is a player with potential. This is not a ready-made player. And I tell you what, today I was very impressed with his defensive work rate, and he's an excellent communicator on the pitch. But he's one of those players that we know that he's got potential. We know that he's gonna get better as time goes on. But it goes back to what Ange Postecoglou said. This transfer window is all about experienced players. And, of course, the club signed him when Thomas Frank wasn't even the Tottenham manager. So,
Chris, my worry with Matisse Tell is that Bayern Munich were happy to let him go for 30 million in the end. So that potential that he had maybe a year ago, do they still believe he's got that ceiling? Because players do burst onto the scene, young players. Someone who was talked about a lot over in Ireland was Evan Ferguson. There was talk of 100 million for him. He's now at Roma. And it was at West Ham on loan last year. So players that initially come on the scene can be talked about as the next best thing, but never really materialize. I think we agreed, was it 45-50 million pound for Tell, and they were happy to let him go for 30 million in the end up. So my concern would be with Matisse Tell, as he all what's built up to be, he may have that potential in him. A lot of players have potential, but we rarely see it. Look how many young players we've signed over the last few years who, it gets to the point now when the player we signed there, the Japanese player, I can't think of his name, the centre back now. Somebody knows it there, the centre back's name.
Kota Takai. He actually walked past the away end today, and he was at the game.
Yeah, but how many of these players have we signed now? I can't just go, well, are we ever going to see this player, or are we going to see this potential of a player? Because a lot of these players are now, Valise is a good one, who I think he scored 1 goal, but part minutes, and now we're looking to shift him. So a complete waste of time. So I just hope that Tell's not one of those players where, yes, he works hard, and he does, and he worked hard today, but we need quality, Chris. We need work rate only gets you so far, and Tell for me is a squad player, not a player that should be starting in the team. And I hope he's not. If Son moves on, I hope he's not the replacement for Son, because I think we need somebody that's got a bigger output and ready to play in these Premier League games, because I think he is a player that when he played in the Premier League, I think his better games for Spurs have been in Europe. So I think he's still adjusting to the style of the Premier League and the intensity of it. Maybe I think in the Frankfurt game, he had a good game out in Frankfurt that night. But it wouldn't surprise me if he's more useful in Europe. But the standard of the European games is going to go up tenfold this year in the Champions League. So look, the attacking players, the minute, Chris, Kudus for me looks to be our strongest, and he's just come in the door. So that tells you that the players that are there, unless Thomas Frank can work a miracle with Brennan Johnson, we're going to see more of the same with Johnson, of maybe not being the most appealing on the eye, but he might score a lot of goals at the back post. And I think that's where the frustration comes from the fan base, that they see this player that scored 16 goals last year, but probably didn't have 16 great games. So they want to see more from him. But look, if Kudus can score 16 goals and Johnson can score 16 goals and your striker score goals, the least of my worries is if Johnson's scoring goals, then I'm not really concerned if he's not really the most appealing on the eye, because this is Dirk Kuyt was one of those players for Liverpool, and he scored some big goals for Liverpool without being the most flashy. So the issue for me at the moment is the striker situation, Chris, because you've seen it today. No recognised number 9. Tell for me is not a striker, so no recognised number 9 in the Luton side, and then Blankshear's coming on at the end, who probably will go out on loan. And Richarlison's been injury prone, and probably we're trying to shift him anyway. Solanke, for me, since he signed, had this brilliant record at Bournemouth where he never got injured. He's had a lot of knocks and a lot of injuries since he came to Spurs. So the striker situation worries me, that I don't want us to go into a Champions League game on a Wednesday because Solanke's injured and Richarlison's injured, and we're having to play Tell through the middle, or maybe having to play Johnson through the middle, because a big club like Spurs really should have that situation sorted. Solanke obviously will be about, but I think if we're really serious, Chris, we need to go on out and bring in a striker that can compete with Solanke, not a player where he's not a bad player if Solanke gets injured. We need a player that's going to put Solanke under pressure for his position, and I think that's what you're seeing with Liverpool at the moment. They're signing players, and people are going, well, where's he going to fit in because they've got this player? Well, that's brilliant for a squad because he's got great competition, and there's no player guaranteed to start in that Liverpool midfield at the moment. There's no one guaranteed to start. Ekatiki's been bought on. Is he going to have to compete with Isak for his spot? So that's where we need to get to. I'm not expecting it all to happen this year, but I still want to see, as Blake says, and I think I said it before, Chris, that we need to sign at least 4 ready-made players to come under the starting lineup. And then if we're bringing in players to address the squad. But I think we've seen it today, Chris. There's a massive issue at left back, a massive issue, and it needs to be somebody that can come in and compete with Udogie, not just a backup player, because Udogie's been injury prone as well. He's had a lot of knocks, and he's not a reliable source for someone that can play loads and loads of games. And one thing about Udogie as well, you see, a lot of the games he plays in, see after 75 minutes, he's on the floor stretching his legs. So he's not really a player sometimes that can get through 90 minutes in a game. So with the intensity that we're going to have in the Champions League this year, Chris, I think we need major surgery in this transfer market. And the worrying thing at the minute is, Chris, I'm not sure how many players in our squad that we're not so keen on keeping are fancied elsewhere. So, and the wages that some of these players are on, like Richarlison, he might not want to go to Saudi Arabia, and if that's the only option, then are we going to be stuck here with Richarlison? We may have to just cut our losses. I mean, how many loans is Brian Hill going to have before the club accept maybe just shifting them for €5 million off the books instead of saying they want €15 million? Well, these loans aren't working out because it's straight loans or a loan with an option. There's no obligation. And that's the worrying thing, that are we going to be in this situation where Basuma goes on a loan, or Brian Hill goes on another loan, Richarlison ends up going, there's talk about Everton maybe on a loan. That's not going to help us out long term. We need to get the players that are not fancied off the books for whatever fee you can get, and just take a punch on the nose and go out and say, do you know what we're going to do now? We're going to bring in players who we know are going to be part of our first team. Not this bringing in a squad player, bringing in a player that can compete for a spot. And then, do you know what? See the player that's on the team. You've got a player that can come into the team if a player gets injured or if a player goes off form. Because how many times last year, Chris, were players playing weren't really at the races? How many games did Madison have or Kulusevski have? Brennan Johnson come out of the team, but we were forced into playing players because the backup options weren't really any better, and that's been a major issue at Spurs for such a long time.
I'll tell you what, we always try to keep these podcasts quite short, but it's impossible because we have so much to talk about. You mentioned Tell there. Blake, let's come to you. Gareth mentioned Tell there. Now, Sky Sports Germany, when Spurs signed Matisse Tell on loan, they said, use him. Spurs need to use him as a number 9. They need to use him as a striker because that is his best position. What do you think the future holds for Matisse Tell in terms of his best position under Thomas Frank at Spurs? And also, we've all said every single Spurs fan wants to see new signings in, especially in the summer window, to try and, for the club to show real intent of going forward and fighting on all fronts, etc. Like the board have spoken about, like all of us fans feel that we want to see our club fighting on all fronts. But Gareth's absolutely right. When you talk about a number of these development players, a number of these young players, it's fair to say in the 2 summers under Ange Postecoglou and in this summer so far, whenever these young players, these development players are given opportunities and given game time, and I love to see it, Blake, every single one of them take their opportunity. None of them ever seem nervous. Every single one of them comes in, delivers, and then Gareth's absolutely right. Some of them then go out on loan. Some of them aren't given opportunities in this first team. There is that very fine line, isn't there, of a player being ready, not ready, going out on loan, don't make it at Spurs. And then, of course, the fans want new signings. How on earth do some of these players actually break into the first team and are given a proper opportunity?
Yeah, I still remember the call up from Sky Sports Germany about playing Tell down the middle and obviously giving him as much opportunity as you possibly can. I think he's still suited to the left. I think that's just where he is. And I don't know if he's quite ready to replace Sonny, who I think will be on the South. He'll be in the Asia tour and then he'll depart. That's just a gut feeling I have. But he's not ready. He needs to be given opportunity. He needs to be given chances to of course, play in the squad. But it's not. I don't think he's a starting 11 player, which is what Gareth touched on earlier. So, in terms of these other young players coming in, I remember so many points in the season last year where it actually really helped having Gray, Bergvall, and the like, all these young starlets basically getting heaps of game time due to injury. So it only helped their development in the long term. So perhaps it is time to pull the trigger on these young kids and just make sure that they're budding and they're getting as much time as they possibly can. But it is frustrating as a fan because I still remember when Will Lancashire put a goal in against Galatasaray away. That's an incredible feat for such a young player, getting his first Spurs senior goal in Turkey away match day in Europa League, and then he gets put out on loan. It was just a crazy thought to have, and Look, I think it's a tricky situation. As you said, it's a very fine line between, do we persist with the young player or do we go and get experience? And I think it's always, Spurs tend to / always go down the let's develop what we've got, or not move on players that we should have a very long time ago. We seem to have this real problem of holding on to players. Brian Gill comes to mind. We held on to Tanguy and Dembele for too long. That was we were talking about young players that just never really took off. That was another one that we had in our squad that didn't really take off. So I think there's major surgeries needed, as Gareth touched on before. I think it's time to dip into the market, cut your losses on players that are not cutting it for the squad anymore. How long are we going to keep holding on to players that just are not going to play regular minutes for us anymore? Keep getting put out on loan. Has Reguilon been released yet, for instance? Reggie, that's another player that needs to be moved on.
He's gone.
Yes.
But
right.
that'll be the issue. If we keep loaning out Brian Hull, it'll be the same until his contract expires. You're as well just getting rid of him now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, totally agree. Totally. It doesn't actually do anything by putting them out on loan. And the club is probably in their own mind thinking, we're saving money by not cutting our losses yet. We're doing this, we're doing that. We're making moves to get players in, but it's just backhanding it all the way through. So it's a big concern. I think we've got to have a major facelift in this summer. And Morgan Gibbs-White, we were talking about the magic number being 4 signings coming in terms of experience. Maybe Gibbs-White will put us halfway, 2 out of 4, 2 more to come in. I think a number 6, I think a left back are probably the next 2. We'll see what happens. But yeah, we want to be going into these games confident, especially the Super Cup.
Matt, let's come to you. Let's go now to talk about the Wickham 2-2 draw, because that was a lot more of an exciting game. It did seem actually that we could have conceded a lot more than 2. And like you said, Thompson, when he came on, he actually had a very impressive display at Leyton Orient midweek. That I was at that game, and he was on the score sheet in our 3-1 defeat there at Brisbane Road. But like I've mentioned to Blake earlier, that when these youngsters do get their opportunities, they certainly do grab them. You've mentioned Sarr as well, hoping that Sarr will become our Frank Lampard. Let's have a look at the first goal that he scored for Tottenham Hotspur away today against Wickham. Matt, talk us through the goal. What do you make of the goal today, and what did you make of his performance? Because you want someone like Sarr in the centre of midfield, certainly shooting outside the box. I'm loving the fact that when we've seen these couple of games under Thomas Frank, there does seem to be a lot more shots outside the box like this.
Yeah, I agree. It's something that we did not see much with Ange. And as you can see from there, was some nice play down the right side and then into Odebear. Odebear made a nice turn, took a touch away, created that little bit of space and whipped out a nice shot, which, the keeper made a nice, fine save. Of course, he pushed it right out to Sarr. And a lot of times we see plays like this, or in the past, we've seen those players not make those runs in to follow up. And I believe Blake spoke something about coaching youth level, and I also coach at the youth level. Always crash the goal. You never know. You're never going to win the lotto if you don't buy a ticket. You got to crash that post. And so Sarr made that nice run knowing that, Odebear was going to unleash that shot. And he really made a good spot for that. So I think Sarr did. He has an ability to find those. Like I said, he knows where the ball is going to be. Odebear, I did think he had some nice touches. He was lively. But yeah, I mean, it's very nice to see this bit of play. Like I said, there were some really nice bits of play in this first half. And Sarr's second goal was similar. It was kind of off. I believe it was also. I believe I have my notes. It was from the left side. Thompson did a nice 1-2 with Sarr to create it from the left side. And Thompson, I don't know who this kid is, and I believe you just spoke that he played at Leyton Orient and scored a goal there. But as you can see with this nice little 1-2, I think we're going to see in a second. I believe Romero wins it. Right there, see? Right? Boom. Creates that. There we go. We got Sarr. He drives up a little bit. Smart. Pushes it wide. And then creates that. He's smart. He gets into that space. Like, exactly. He just drops it off. and then just gets into a dangerous position, which is exactly what I think we're going to see a lot more from our midfielders. We didn't see that so much last year, where like our Sarrs and our Basumas and our Bentancurs were not getting into the box as much. And I think we may see it like this because it's like he's able to drive the ball forward, pull in players, distribute it wide, and then be smart enough to make that second move into that spot that where the defenders have been have left, which is nice, which is a nice key area. And then if you see his finish on it was a nice little bit of technique because he was closed down very quickly. I believe there were 4 players around him, like within like a split second of him receiving that, and he was just able to get it right out of his seat, super quick, right into the back of the net. Sarr's always had good technique, I feel, with like shooting or finishing. His passing, his long range passing, his short range passing is kind of like erratic at times, or sometimes he puts the wrong speed on it. Sometimes you'll see like it's a very simple ball that he has to push out wide, and he'll put too much like backspin on it, and then the winger will have to slow down to adjust it, or he'll put it too far in front of him, and then the move breaks down. But I know there was a lot of concern from a lot of our Spurs fans last year for Sarr because he was irregular, he was erratic, he was injured, he'd score a nice goal, then he didn't have a good game. He was taken out at halftime a few games. And then, during the run-up to the Europa League final and the championship there, he played a key role in it. So I think this is still a young player. I think people forget that he's still only 22, I believe, 21 or 22. So I think it was nice. He has a good intelligence. I think with Thomas Frank, I believe Blake and Gareth were both talking about that he's like nicknamed the professor. He sees things in a certain way, and I'm sure he's bestowing a lot of this knowledge onto a lot of these players to take these positions, to make these plays, to engage the players directly at the opposition, create the chance and make the chance better. That's one thing that Thomas Frank did speak about when he was at Brentford. You want to make the chance better. Like, hey, you're in a great shooting position right now. Can you make that chance better? Right? So that's why he had success at Brentford. He was always working on how to make that chance better. And to make that chance better, you have to impart this intelligence into the players. And I think Sarr is showing that intelligence and getting into these positions and doing exactly what Frank is wanting at the moment. I mean, it was a second preseason match, so we don't expect leaps and bounds, but it was nice to see these little bits of play. So I do think that Sarr is going to have a nice season under Frank. He fills a lot of different roles. He could be that water carrier. He could be a box to box type guy. He could play like almost as an attacking playmaker, but more of a direct one. Like, you have Madison, who's more of a playmate, like a distribution playmaker, and Sarr is more of like a directly run at you type playmaker. It's good to have, again, the skill set. The skill set for the squad is good. And I just want to make one more note about the skill set and the squad. We're talking about depth. We do have depth, but we have depth in all the wrong areas to progress this club forward. We have plenty of players in certain positions who cannot work with this system. And that's the problem. If we're going to progress forward, we're going to have to, like everybody's hit on, we're going to have to make some really tough cuts, tough decisions. Like these guys who are always out on loan, get rid of them. If we got to make decisions, these tough decisions. This is how clubs win Premier Leagues and Champions Leagues and Cups and consistently stay at the top by making these tough decisions. And I just feel like it is about time that we pull up our big boy pants and start acting like a real club and make these decisions to fill these clear gaps in our squad profile.
Now, fair play to Blake, because it is now pushing 4 a.m. In Australia where Blake is. So we will end this podcast very, very soon, Blake, I promise. So fair play to you. And thanks so much for coming on. I have got 5 final questions for all of you, and I'm going to try and cover them all at once. Gareth, let's start with you. The 5 questions are as follows. Number 1, who has really impressed you so far in the 3 pre-season games under Thomas Frank? Number 2, who do you want more from? Who do you want to see a little bit more from? Number 3 is, who do you think that will leave the football club in this summer transfer window before the 1st of September? Number 4 is, what else do we need as an absolute minimum for Thomas Frank in order to be fighting on all 4 fronts? And number 5 is our next pre-season friendly against Arsenal. Now, it has just been confirmed by Arsenal Football Club whilst we've been on air that Victor Gyökeres has just signed for them. They have had a big window. What are you expecting from our pre-season friendly in Hong Kong? Because although this is a pre-season friendly, of course, the rivalry between the 2 clubs is absolutely huge. And I might add, this is the first ever North London derby to be played outside of the UK. Gareth, I hope you remember all those 5 questions.
I do, yeah. Number 1 was who has impressed me. I think Kudus. I've been impressed by him because of the directness, the bravery to get on the ball and attack people and create opportunities. I think being a new player, maybe people think, oh, he's just picking the new player, but he has something different that we don't have. And I they're not going to be my favourite team in the Super Cup, but PSG have kind of been like my second favourite team to watch because they're so direct, like brilliant runners. The likes of Doué, Kvaratskhelia, Dembele, just so much talent and ability. Barcola as well. They've been electric to watch, and kind of if you have Kudus one side and we're to get somebody in the other side to do the same, it just gets you off your seat if you're at the stadium when you see players. And we've always had players like that. We're kind of got us off our seat, but for the last few seasons, we haven't really had that kind of player. You remember when Gareth Bale was here, as soon as he picked up the ball, everyone was going, what's he going to do next? And don't want to put that kind of pressure on Kudus, but, every time he gets the ball, he thinks something might happen here because he's prepared to take opportunities. He's not feared of losing the ball because he's trying to dribble. And that's the important thing with fans. If Kudus is trying these things and they aren't coming off, from a coach's point of view, when I coach kids and they show the bravery to try and beat a player and it doesn't work out, can't be too harsh on them because they are trying to make things happen and won't work every single time. So I think Kudus will give us a different dynamic, their team, and hopefully there's more to follow. Number 2, look, people probably think I'm beating them with a stick, but Matisse Tell, for me, I want to see more quality. I want to see more output. I want to see better decision making. Work rate, fine, but I want to see more quality because this player we've been told as potentially a top player, haven't seen that yet so far. Maybe by the end of the preseason tour and the time the season starts, because we are a wee bit short, maybe Tell will be a starter, and that'll be his opportunity to prove the likes of me and some of the other fans wrong. Number 3 was, who do you think will leave between now and the window yet? I think the movement, after the tour, the Son thing will move on. I think it's the fact that Thomas Frank hasn't named his captain yet tells me that the Son's probably going to be going after the tour. And I'm hearing that Spurs aren't really asking for a lot of money too. So I think the issue with Son's the wages, getting them off the books. If they feel that he's done his time here and he's not going to offer him what he's done in the past, they're probably thinking if we can get a half decent fee, 20-25 million, and get £200,000 a week off the wage bill, probably frees them up to use that wages elsewhere on possibly new players. And I think the likes of Van de Ven's going to need a contract extension. He's going to have to go on a bigger wage. So some of that could be used there for Van de Ven. But number 4 was where do we need players and in what positions? We need a left back for sure. A left back that can compete with Udogie. I know I said that earlier, but that's a prime position. I think we need a striker that can compete with Solanke. And we need that attacking midfielder that we spoke about. Hopefully it's Gibbs White. And a number 6 is a priority for me. And a number 6 that's the Palhinha deal doesn't excite me. I thought Palhinha maybe a couple of years ago would have been a good signing. I think the fact that he's 30 now, my issue would be, is he going to be a player that's going to be, is he going to fill that gap for 3 years? Will his legs, he isn't the quickest anyway. Will he be able to get round the pitch? Will he be able to play 3 games a week? That would be my main concern with Palhinha now. I think the ship has sailed on him from my point of view, but it does look like maybe there will be something done there. Maybe the Polina thing could be, maybe Polina will be coming on as a squad player, and maybe they still will go after a number 6. I mean, if you're getting Polina for a loan, or possibly you've talked about 15, 20 million, maybe that isn't a bad fee for him. But if you get him on loan, maybe it fills a gap in the squad for a year, because I think Polina as a second option as a 6, as a decent player, and could do that role. But for me, the Adam Morton one excites me. I think there's a real player in him. I think a way that Matt spoke about Sarr, he's a completely different player to Sarr. Sarr as a ball runner, he's dynamic. He's not the type of player that's going to string passes together. Adam Morton's that kind of player. I think Adam Morton gives you that real biss for the likes of Sarr and the likes of our players, the likes of Gibbs White. Gibbs White's a player that likes to run at people as well and opens up and feed your wingers. So I think Morton gives you that real strong base, and as well, he's a player I think could be a Spurs player for a long time. So even though it's quite a lot of money, and I've always spoken about young players, but from what I've seen of Adam Morton, he is Premier League ready. He is ready to come on the first team and deliver. We've seen his performance in the FA Cup final against Man City. He was one of the best players in the pitch. And when Liverpool's looking at you as well, there's definitely a player there that's ready to come on. And number 5, I believe, was how many pints am I going to drink in the Super Cup? Was it? No, I don't. No, sorry, it wasn't. Sorry, it was the Arsenal. It was the Arsenal pre-season tour, was it?
Yeah.
Chris, the thing for me, I said this at the start. I didn't get the schedule of this game. I don't know what benefit out of it or the money, because if one team was to lose this game convincingly, and it's probably more likely us at the moment, that's going to really annoy the fans. If we go out there and get beat by 3 or 4 goals, you can't just go, it's a pre-season friendly, because it's Arsenal. People will take it seriously. This is the most important game of the tour, really. You know, if we beat Arsenal or get a decent result, you can probably get away with a bad one against Newcastle. People will really want to win this game, because, like you says, it's not just a pre-season friendly, it's a rivalry, but also it's the fact that it's the first game between the two outside of the UK, so there's a bit of bragging rights on the line. And you look at Arsenal, they've got a centre half in Mosquera, they've got a midfielder in Norgard, they've got a striker in Enquiries. So they've also got a second goalkeeper on too, so they've done more business than us. So it's a stronger Arsenal side than what finished the season. And bar Kudus coming in, we're pretty much in the same boat. We've also got a few injuries as well. So Arsenal are definitely favourites for this game. But I mean, I don't know how wise it is from either club's point of view, from a fan perspective, how wise it is to organise this game, because there will be a lot of unhappy people if this game doesn't go well on either side. But if we can get Basuma, Richarlison, and Son out the door, with all those our players we mentioned, the likes of Brian Hill and players that have been on loan, and bring in the likes of Morgan Gibbs White, Adam Morton. I would like us to go for like maybe an Anthony Robertson at left back. I know it would cost maybe 50 million, but he's 27, 28. He's a Premier League experience. There's no sign of him slowing down. He's very good defensively, and he's also got, I think, the most assists from a left back last season. So his output's very good as well. I think he's a Premier League ready player as well. Striker wise, I would like. I mean, the player I wanted all summer is away to Chelsea. I thought João Pedro would be a great option, because he's a different kind of striker to Solanke. So a lot of strikers have moved. Isak looks like he's going to Liverpool. Sesko for me is a gamble, like Ekitike would have been for Liverpool. I think Sesko's been linked by obviously United, Newcastle, and Arsenal. He's likely to end up somewhere, but I don't know if that's the wisest option. Striker wise, there's not too many opportunities. I think that are going to come up in terms of you can hang your hat on a player. Isak's the one. We're not going to get him, but I do want to see a striker coming on that is ready to compete with Solanke and can score goals, and maybe a bit of pace as well, because I think Solanke, whilst he's a good presser and a good finisher and good in the air, we probably lack that pace through the middle that maybe an hour striker could give us. So if we run all those things, Chris, and we have a great time out in Italy and Spurs win the Super Cup, I'll come on all smiles for the first game of the season against Burnley.
There are an awful lot of ifs in that in those 5 answers.
There's always ups and buts on this podcast, Chris,
Oh,
because
yeah.
Spurs never do anything in the right order.
Yeah. Right, Blake, if you want to get to bed sometime soon, give me 5 quick answers.
You probably should have said to me, Chris, 5 quick fire questions.
I should put,
Just
I
quick
should put a
fire,
timer
quick
on the
fire.
clock for you, Gareth.
So number one, I'm actually going to go Cuti Romero. I think he's had a really, really good few games. 2 games. Obviously, didn't play the third. I think he's next captain, and obviously we can see that he's got fantastic leadership skills and a proven winner time and time again. And now that he's delivered that trophy, I think he's probably the obvious choice for captain. So he's probably my pick for the most impressed. Need more? I would say probably Tell. I think Matthias Tell is probably my pick for needing a little bit more at this stage. Just that inexperience, being a young player, and I think he can step up into the big moments for sure. I think he's probably the sore thumb that sort of stands out, but there's obviously a couple of other players there too that we know are probably in the same basket. I think Basuma probably a little bit more. He has his moments where he drops in and out of games. It would be good to see a lot more consistency for me. I think number 3, it's going to be Son. I think he's as I mentioned before, that's going to be my gut feeling that I think he will depart, which is a really sad day. I just love the man so much. I think he's just been such a loyal servant to our football club, but there does come a time where it needs to happen. So I guess that time will probably come. I think in terms of what we need coming in, Morgan Gibbs-White is a really good one. Obviously, that would be nice to get done. But I think we really need a 6. And there's been a few comments rolling through about getting a real animal in that number 6 role. I think that's exactly what we need. Someone like a Højbjerg who's not afraid to put his boot in. We gave him so much stick as Spurs fans back in the day, but my goodness, we could use him at the moment, to be honest. Somebody that can just shut down that play and just and be ferocious in the contest would be great. And in terms of the Arsenal game, I think we're going in as underdogs again. Hasn't stopped us before getting a result against them. There's nothing friendly about it. There's absolutely nothing friendly about it. I would love nothing more than to see a victory in Hong Kong. Doesn't matter if it's a friendly or not, or if they label it as that. But yeah, I think it's going to be tough. They've obviously improved their squad as mentioned. So I'm going to say maybe a draw. Trying to be a little bit optimistic there and realistic all in one. But they are a quality outfit, and it's going to be tough to get a result. But it's a North London derby, anything can happen. So there we go. There's my 5 quick fire.
And Matt?
All right. So who impressed me the most? I believe Gareth spoke about Kudus. I agree. That's a good one. Blake spoke about Romero. I am also very impressed with how he's played in the last two preseason matches. Luka Vuskovic. I mean, there were some nervy moments in the very beginning of the Reading match. I know he kind of took a bad touch I believe it was his first touch. But after that, he calmed down. I think having that calming presence next to him of Danso in the first match and then Romero in the second match has really helped him grow and become a little bit more comfortable. Kinski made a nice couple of saves. I thought he was very impressive. I think of the two, Vic kind of looked a little shaky at times with the claiming of crosses. We've read the story before, but you know what? It's good that we have 2 good goalkeepers to kind of maybe, I'm sure we'll get some good play out of the goalkeeping position anyway. What do we need more from? I'm not going to say anything about Bergville because I know he's coming back from an injury. I know everyone kind of pooped on Tell already, so I kind of feel that we should see a little bit more out of him as well. He's more of I believe both of these 2 fine gentlemen spoke about him being more better on the left wing. I do agree with that. I think his skill set is better for that, not so much up front, unless it would be up front with a 2. But yeah, I think we need more from Spence. To be honest, I did not see a lot of anything good from Jed Spence during this preseason. I've been unimpressed. The Luton match today was absolutely shambolic. He was he couldn't get his touch right. When he did get his touch right, his next touch would lead him into trouble. He gave away a few cheap fouls. It It's preseason. Not going to lose my mind, but he should do better, especially considering how well he did for last year. Who will leave? I think we all kind of hit on the big ones. I think Sonny will leave. I think it's about that time. If he goes to LA, if he goes to where I still think he could tear it up in another league, maybe in the Bundesliga or Serie A, where it's not so fast paced with this transitional type of thing. I think he could do well, but no matter where he goes, he will always be a Spurs legend, and we'll get the statue for him going at some point. Richie, if a good bid comes in, that would be great, but that would kind of leave us in a position where who do we scramble to bring in to replace him? Because then we're down to just Solanke, and we can't have that. Bissouma, he has 12 months left on his contract. Not exactly sure where we stand with that. I mean, is it smart business to give him a longer contract, considering the erratic nature of his performances over the last 2 years? I mean, I see it as bad business. I would be for moving Bissouma for whatever price. I don't think you're going to get much return on him at this point. And then from that, I would use that funds to buy this Hayden Hackney from Middlesbrough, who is similar to an Adam Wharton. And I'm just saying, as much as I would love to bring in Adam Wharton, there is no way on God's green earth that Levy or anybody in Spurs will okay £100 million for Adam Wharton. And Crystal Palace made it very clear they have no intention of selling him for anything less than that. So I think that's a non-starter. I think if we go to Middlesbrough, go to Hayden Hackney and say, hey, listen, dude, you've been here for a while and they're not coming up anytime soon. Like, why don't you come with us and see what's going on? I think that would be a good thing. Morgan Gibbs White, it's very clear in these two preseason matches today that we needed a playmaker, whether it be from deep, as he can play, or from up top, or from further up the pitch, which he could also play. So I think he kind of fills the void of a couple of different skill sets. Somebody spoke, I believe, Blake, you spoke about another left back. I do think that we do need somebody to push on with Udogie. Udogie has had a few knocks, injuries. I believe Gareth spoke about that. There's been more than a few times where he's been out for an extended period of time due to these little small minor injuries. And we need to do, and he's a good player when he's healthy, but we just need that competition. So I think that's what we're looking for to make ourselves better. As for the preseason versus Arsenal, I think, I share the thoughts on both of these gentlemen. Blake has made a good point about us being underdogs before. We're always the underdog. I only remember a period of about 2 years where we were ever looked at as favorites. So it's a role we're used to playing, but I do question the sanity of having a North London derby in Hong Kong, and it's weird because it's not a friendly like everyone has already said. There's going to be some meaty challenges. There are going to be some bust ups. There may even be a bottle thrown at somebody. I don't know. I mean, this is a strange world we're living in, and it's going to be warm there. People are hot blooded. All of a sudden somebody starts swinging, but I don't think we should get too worried about it. I don't want to lose 4-0, 3-0. I don't think Gyökeres is going to be the striker that they expect him to be. I think they're looking for a certain skill, like a profile of a striker, and I don't think Gyökeres is that profile. I think more of the Frankfurt guy, and Ishak was more of their style. But anyway, I think we're going to do fine in the preseason. If we get a 2-2 draw, that's great. 3-3 draw, 1-1, whatever. And even if we lose by the odd goal, they're further along. They should be challenging for Champions Leagues and Premier Leagues, and like Lego Head always says, they're pushing for all the top spots. They're the best team that's ever come in second, right? Where's the trophy for that? I want to say this. But yeah, I mean, even if they win, it's just going to prove, okay, well, you guys are further along than us, which is understood. So I think it's okay to have some realism. We got some work to do, and let's hopefully we could get that work done before the season starts, so we're not just a hot mess when next month rolls around.
Well, you're absolutely right, Matt. The Europa League winners will be facing the team that finished second in the Premier League last season. Blake, last question for you. Who talks more, the Americans or the Irish?
That's a real tough one. You guys have been fantastic. Honestly, it's been great to be on with you, and I think it's a joint winner.
Brilliant. Blake, thank you so much for joining me. And the time, full respect to you guys all around the world, because I know you guys get up at a ridiculous hour to watch Tottenham and then coming on podcasts like this to talk about it. So fair play to you. Where can people find you if they want to, and what are you up to at the moment? Anything exciting?
So I'm on mostly on Twitter and Instagram, Mr. Blakey D. Got a bit of a project in the works for a pod around men's health and wellbeing. So I'll share some details with you guys. It's been a bit of a journey recently. So get some great guests on, and we'd love to have you guys a part of it as well at some stage. And I think it's a really important topic, close to my heart. So it'd be great to share at some stage once it launches.
Yes, best of luck with that, Blake. And yes, definitely come on to talk about that. And I'm sure many of the guys and everyone else would like to get involved. So thank you so much for your input today. Get some sleep, and we look forward to that next game in Hong Kong against Arsenal. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. What are you up to at the moment? Where can people find you?
I'm just enjoying my vacation right now. We're doing some day trips with the kids. I took the dog to a few different spots. Right now I'm just trying to enjoy the non-oppressive humidity. It's not so bad today in the last couple of days, so it's real good. You could find me talking my smack on Blue Sky. I'm at Me Crazy Matt at Me Crazy Matt Blue Sky Point Social. I'm not really good with these things, like trying to figure it out. But I think it says it right there. Like, here, let me see. Let me see right there. Look at that. Look at me.
Yep.
So that's what I'm doing. And thank you again, Chris. Thank you, Gareth. Thank you, Blake. You guys are fine gentlemen. I really appreciate sharing some opinions with you guys, and then shooting and talking about the club that drives us insane and drives us to freed from desire, right?
Honestly, there is so much to talk about. These podcasts could literally go on for hours. I know some of them do. We're just under 2 hours right now. So apologies, Blake, because I know that you want to get back to bed as soon as possible. Gareth, thank you so much for joining us as well. You've been great as always. And I look forward to seeing you at the Super Cup final in a couple of weeks' time. Where can people find you and what you're up to at the moment?
No, thanks, Chris, for having me on. I know I'll be on quite a lot sometimes. So always good to come on, and always good to talk Spurs, and usually always shift my plans too for these podcasts. So sometimes I end up in trouble for shifting the plans as well. So Chris, I was on a promise tonight, and of course I'm going to be late again. So I'm going to have to make it up there now. But look, brilliant to come on, talk Spurs. I'm looking forward to the Super Cup. I'm sure you'll find me on Chris's socials out there. We've done some brilliant stuff in Bilbao, and here's hoping for the same out in Udinese, because it would be unbelievable to win an trophy, and so early in the season too. It would give everyone a big lift that maybe this season could be different. So you can also find me on Gareth Hotspurs here on Twitter, usually talking about Spurs and all Premier League related topics. So as it says, Chris, thanks for having me on, and best of luck ahead for this season.
Thank you so much, Gareth, Blake, Matt. You've been great guests today. Thank you so much. Pity we couldn't talk about 2 wins today, but it wasn't to be. Of course, we now travel to Hong Kong to face Arsenal. Let's wait and see what happens in that one. And I'm sure we all agree we want to see a little bit more activity in this transfer window. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Thanks so much for all of your incredible support. And we will see you on the next one. Stay safe and well. Come on, you Spurs.